To simple object motion with physics and gravity. So we're going to learn how to move a player, like think of something like a spaceship, and it's in a gravity environment. So let's take a look at what that looks like, and then we'll talk about what it's going to do. Also, if you haven't seen previous videos in this series, you might want to check those out to get an idea of where we're at and how we build this. In particular, the object motion template might help you out. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I've got a spaceship. Okay, it's in gravity. Okay, so I can thrust, so I'm going up, and then gravity's pulling me back down. Just went off the screen there a little bit. And then when I hit the bottom, it stops. Okay, and then I can take off again and move. And that's what we're looking at. So basically, what we got to do is we have to create gravity. So in this case, I've created gravity. It's a constant because constants are usually capitalized in programs, and this is part of the kind of main program, because gravity, it should be universal unless you've got Q on your ship and he can change the universal gravitational constant, but we don't. So you might want to put it into your class if there's a case where you're able to change gravity locally in your game. But in our game, let's say we can't. Okay, so what we do is we've got our player class, and it's a child of the turtle class, and we start the game, and the heading is 90. 90 is directly up. Okay, so we set our thrust to 3, and that was just a number I just experimented. That number worked out pretty well, and because we're simulating motion in the real world, we need our delta x, which is our change in x, and our delta y, which is change in y, to be calculated differently. Or separately, rather. Okay. There's also a concept called terminal velocity. This really helps in games, so your spaceship doesn't start moving too fast because of you just have too much gravity. Otherwise, you got to really play around with the numbers and that sort of thing. So I've set terminal velocity to -5, even though technically, if there's no air, like on the moon, there is no terminal velocity. But on Earth, there would be a terminal velocity because of wind resistance. So we're going to use that concept anyway. So a lot of different things are going on here. So let me start with accelerating left. Okay, so what I've done is for accelerate left, you change your dx, which is your change in x, by the thrust times 0.2. So basically what I'm saying is our spaceship's vertical thrust, that's our most powerful engine. I'm going to take that number, and I'm going to get 20% of that. I just picked that number. It could be anything. So my left and right acceleration is going to be 20% of my vertical acceleration. I don't know if that's correct for spaceships. Probably not, but it works pretty well in the context of a game. You can play around in your own games with that. And then if I'm accelerating right, I'm adding to dx, the same thing. My thrust times 20%. Accelerating up is straightforward. I am changing my dy, which is my change in y. I'm adding my thrust. So that is the thrust that the spaceship gets from the engine shooting out the back and going in the vertical direction. Okay. So that's how we're changing all those things. Now, so that changes the acceleration dx or dy. Actually moving. Okay, moving's not complicated, but there's a lot of little things. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our current x-coordinate plus our change in x, and our current y-coordinate plus our change in y. Okay, now, of course, if our change in y is minus, it's going to subtract, but that's the way it works. So that's the basic thing. Let me comment these things out and just show you what it looks like if that's not functioning. This is what it does right now. So okay, nothing. Okay, so it went right off the screen because this is where I do the gravity. Okay, so let's uncomment that. Okay, and put the comments back in. Actually, let me leave that commented out. So basically, we're setting the ground level. So just an experiment. So at -300 down here. So if I hit the ground, I want to stop moving in the x direction. I want to, in the y direction. I want to stop moving in the x direction. We'll assume that we've landed, and I want to set the y to -300. Okay, so So if it's less than minus 300, it does this and sets it back to 300. Okay, so that basically sets our lowest point that the spaceship can go to. If it's not below that, that means it's still in the sky, it's still flying around. I change my dy by gravity. So gravity is subtracted from my change in y. So that means every time I go through, it goes down. So that means I get faster and faster towards the bottom of the screen. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so I'm going to go up, and then watch what happens. It just goes faster, 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 faster. Okay, hits the bottom. Boom. Okay, that looks like a crash landing to me. But what I want to do is just to make our game, again, it depends on how your game's set up. You might not want it this way. And I set the terminal velocity so that it looks more like my spaceship's floating. Let's take a look at that. Tabs and spaces. Okay, I got tabs and spaces. Yeah, I know. Sorry, I prefer tabs. I'm not sure why. And just gotta make sure you didn't have those in there. And run terminal. Okay, I guess it's really hard to tell. Let me change that number so it's a bit easier to see that we are slowing down. So let's set the terminal velocity to -2. You'll see how it just kind of floats down. See how it just stopped accelerating? So it kind of floats and slows down and lands. So you gotta, again, it depends on your game and how your game's structured and what your kind of dimensions are, what you would want to set these numbers to. Again, if you're in a spaceship type game, you may not want to have a terminal velocity, but that's really up to you. You just really got to play with the numbers and figure out how you want your game to go. So that was that. That was object motion in gravity. Stay tuned for more, or check out the previous tutorials if you have not. Thanks.